It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows. Go get 'em, George.
I'm back live and welcome to the mother of all talk shows. I had to make a little excursion. Good morning, Vietnam, but I am back and alive and kicking. Big thanks to Jackson Hinkle for standing in so admirably for me on Wednesday evening. It's 19th nervous breakdown time for Donald Trump and everyone can see it. J.D. Vance can see it. His cabinet can see it, the Congress can see it, the media can see it, the public can see it. Remove him, you fools! I'll be talking to two excellent guests in the course of this edition of the Mother of All Talk Show. Stay tuned. To see, especially if you have the misfortune to be on the failing, flailing Truth Social, Trump's own social media platform, which is losing hundreds of millions of dollars a year, which is one straw in the wind, but there are many of the sinking of the once flagship MAGA. He is daily, actually hourly, entirely contradicting himself as this war enters the fourth week with the costs astronomical to the US taxpayer, but even more astronomical to the US consumer, to the consumer of petrol and diesel and oil all over the Western world. Indeed, all over the world. The financial and economic catastrophe I'll come to in a minute. But I want to concentrate just for a few minutes on what I call the madness of Donald Trump. And I mean literal madness of Donald Trump. The cognitive degeneration of a man elected with such pomp for a second presidential term only a little over a year ago. He told everyone on Truth Social, but then the world, that the United States did not need to open the Straits of Hormuz, didn't use the Strait of Hormuz, and it should be liberated and cleared, as if it could be, by those who do depend on it, amongst whom he included China. But China has no problem at all exiting its oil through the Strait of Hormuz. Indeed, Iran is now allowing through tankers only that were purchased in the Chinese currency, the RMB, the yuan. The other countries that he mentioned are countries quite incapable of clearing the Strait of Hormuz, whatever that means, but he said they had to send their navies in order to achieve it. And then the next day, this day, he makes an explicit threat of a war crime if by tomorrow the Strait of Hormuz is not entirely open for business. He said if it is not open without threat by tomorrow's date, then he will unleash the mother of all blizzards of high explosive to destroy Iran's power apparatus, its infrastructure, its electricity. It will switch off every light, every incubator, every piece of electricity in Iran, which is a clearly defined war crime since the Nuremberg tribunals, indeed since the Geneva Conventions, which America signed almost 90 years ago. In any sane country, the Congress would immediately have drawn to his attention that this would be a clear war crime, but they do not in the United States. Now, if he does it, Iran has been perfectly clear. In fact, they've been perfectly clear and truthful throughout this conflict and the run-up to this conflict, not least on our show with Professor Marandi, who's coming up next after this monologue. They've been perfectly clear what they will do if their electricity is destroyed, their power is decimated, as per Donald Trump's explicit statement on Truth Social, and the deadline is tomorrow. So if you don't know it, let me tell you it, especially to those living, working in the Persian Gulf, in the Arab countries that surround Iran. If this happens, said Iran, every single local neighbor of theirs will have all of their infrastructure irrevocably destroyed for all time. That means not just their electricity generation, it means their desalination. And their desalination plants, which are minuscule by importance in Iran, but gigantic in importance in the Arab countries of the Gulf, which are hosting the American bases and which are allowing, despite what they say, American attacks on Iran to take place literally from their land in some cases, in every other case using their air and their water. If this destruction of desalination occurs, then 1 million or more people will die, and very, very quickly. How so? Well, Kuwait depends on its desalination plants for drinking water to the extent of 93%. 93% of Kuwait's drinking water is seawater desalinated and turned into drinking water. If that happens, no one will be able to live in Kuwait. The poor in Kuwait will die. The rich will race to somewhere that they can actually get a bit of water with their whiskey. The desalination dependence in Qatar, in Saudi Arabia, is, though not quite as big, genuinely massive. It's at least 50% in Saudi Arabia. It's more than 50% in Qatar. And it is, well, pretty near 100% in Bahrain, about which more in a minute. So if Donald Trump does this, he's going to cause a catastrophic wave of civilian deaths in the countries that have given him so many diamonds and pearls, that have given him so many $400 million private aircraft, 747s, to buy protection. At least the Genovese family in the city of New York do actually provide the protection that they extort your money for, but not Donald Trump. So there will be no light, there will be no computer, there will be no television, there will be no television transmission. There will be nothing that is electrical that works, either in Iran or in any of the surrounding countries. There will be a flood of refugees. Hey, right-wingers supporting this war, a flood of refugees. Some of them will be glittering nobility. Some of them will be oligarchs of one kind or another. But 70% of the population of Dubai are Indians. They're living not that well in Dubai, but they won't be once the lights and the desalination is switched off. Where will they go? Back to India, or will they head your way? So the consequences of Donald Trump's threat, if carried out, are so dire that even the puppet regimes in the Gulf have begged him not to do it, for obvious reasons. But do you trust Donald Trump not to do it? I certainly do not. He's also threatening, having ruled it out, he's ruled it in again, to put American boots on the ground. Our poll is on that very subject this evening. Now, he might be bluffing. It's very difficult to see, given what happened to the US Navy ships who were sabotaged deliberately by their own sailors, with the toilets first malfunctioning and then a suspicious fire in the laundry room. Though I've just seen the damage done by that suspicious fire in the laundry room, and it looked like the aftermath of the Great Fire of London. Must have been one hell of a laundry room. Must have been one hell of a laundry room fire. Truth is, of course, it was holed by American missile strikes, and the American government lied about it, like they've been lying ever since this war began. And the American media allowed them to lie. The American media perpetrated the lie. They spread it. They're trying to manufacture consent in the United States for Trump's disastrous war, but they are lamentably failing. But given that the sailors did set a laundry room fire, given that the sailors did deliberately clog their toilets with their T-shirts, their socks and their pants, it was, of course, a debatable point that even the 82nd Airborne Division, even the US Marine Corps, are not exactly the kind of patsies that are prepared to go to a predetermined doom, so that Donald Trump's ratings might, just might, get a demonstrable bounce. Into the valley of death they rode. Into the valley of death rode the gallant 600. That's the charge of the Light Brigade. And that's the new charge of the Light Brigade that Donald Trump is now threatening. If he occupies Karg Island will disappear under the sea, and everyone standing on it with it. If anyone thinks Iran will not destroy their oil facilities on Karg Island, they have failed to grasp that for Iran, this is an existential conflict. It's not about economics. It's not about how they'll survive in the future, having destroyed their own oil. It's about whether their country will continue to exist. The plans are clear and obvious: to break Iran up into ethnic and religious fiefdoms that maybe fight each other, and we could sell weapons to both sides. But in any case, they won't be much of a threat to Israel, who are, of course, the primary reason why this conflict is occurring. So for Iran, it's to be or not to be. And in those circumstances, whoever lands with their boots on the ground on any part of Iranian territory will be quickly eviscerated. If anyone doubts that, they are not watching the videos on social media of the pounding that Israel is taking, not just every night, although that's pretty spectacular, but now every day as well. They now know that the state of Israel has no defense to the blizzard of hypersonic, ballistic, and other ordnance that is being fired now 24 hours a day from launchers that no longer exist, according to Donald Trump, missiles that no longer exist. Iran now has air superiority over the skies of Israel. Only a fool can deny that. When they can fire a missile into the Israeli nuclear weapons plant at Dimona in the Negev, yeah, they're finally admitting in the Western media that actually Israel has nuclear weapons. Strategic ambiguity is no more. If Iran can hit Dimona, they can definitely hit Karg Island, which is only a few miles off their own coast. And they won't even have to use ballistic missiles. It's so close. They have 80,000. 80,000. And those drones, which have changed the entire course of warfare in world history, will be raining down on the 82nd Airborne. And they'll be raining down on the US Marine Corps. And there is absolutely nothing that the United States is able to do to stop it. If they were able to, they wouldn't be suffering the humiliation that they have now suffered in Iraq, in Bahrain, in Qatar. They have withdrawn, they have evacuated all of their military personnel from the Arabian side of the Gulf. But yesterday was the most humiliating moment of them all. They begged the Iraqi resistance for 24-hour ceasefire so that they could withdraw all remaining American forces from Iraq, which have occupied Iraq ever since the end of the war in 2003. The Iraq War, of course, was just a stepping stone for what is set to become a very much bigger and much more portentous conflict than the one George Bush entered into in 2003, just around this time of the year. They begged the resistance to allow them to retreat without being under fire. And they've now moved every one of the American forces out of Iraq and into Turkey. The resistance wisely, I think, gave them their 24-hour ceasefire. It's humiliating enough. NATO has withdrawn its troops from Iraq. Who knew NATO had troops in Iraq? The North Atlantic Treaty Organization had troops in Iraq, which they have now withdrawn. Poland! Who knew Poland had troops in Iraq? What were they doing there? But they've withdrawn too. In fact, all Western forces have now withdrawn from Iraq, and Iraq is now a free country. And I very much doubt whether they will allow any of these troops, any of these bases to be reconstituted. There are many of these collaborator regimes that I could name, but I don't want to inflame the situation. It's not really my job, but I mention only one because it has a knock-on effect. Saudi Arabia just paid Jordan to send thousands of anti-riot troops. They have to have thousands of anti-riot troops in Jordan, because if they didn't, the regime in Jordan would no longer exist. They've sent thousands of Jordanian troops. Where? Into the West Bank, which is burning, where there's a pogrom this night and last night. Into the West Bank, where armed Israeli settlers are on a coked up rampage, ethnically cleansing the West Bank, which is legally occupied territory according to the World Court. It is the responsibility of the international community to protect it according to the World Court. No, the Jordanian troops were needed farther away than West Bank, which is where most of them incidentally come from. Most of the people in Jordan are Palestinians, and those that are in the anti-riot troops are almost certainly a majority Palestinian population. But they're not going into the West Bank. They're not going in to protect their fellow countrymen. They're not going in to protect their own people, the villages and towns from which their own parents or grandparents were driven in 1967 by the Israeli occupation of the territory. No, where have they been sent? Saudi Arabia has paid Jordan to send them to Bahrain. Why? Because if they're not there, the government of Bahrain will be overthrown. Now, whether there'll be enough Jordanian forces to stop that, or whether the Jordanian forces can necessarily be counted on to fire on the people of Bahrain, who by overwhelming majority, 80%, reject completely the illegitimate, tyrannical rule of the Emir of Bahrain. Maybe the Emir will end up on the causeway. He may have to leave his gin and tonics behind. He may have to leave his concubines behind, although not necessarily so, and flee to Saudi Arabia. The people of Bahrain have been tortured, literally, for decades. I became involved in Gulf politics when I made a major speech in Parliament in a debate that I instituted to denounce the role of a Scotsman called Ian Henderson, who was the Bahraini regime's chief torturer. He'd made his name as a torturer in Kenya with the Mau Mau, torturing Kenyans, and when he retired, the Bahrainis hired him to be their chief torturer. And I brought this to the notice of the British Parliament and some of the British public. So I've had an interest in Bahrain, and my interest is helping the Bahraini people free themselves from foreign occupation, free themselves from unrepresentative tyranny. Now, I quoted the charge of the Light Brigade a few minutes ago, so let me close with another quotation from that same point. Theirs is not to reason why. Theirs is but to do and die. That's what will happen to any troops that Donald Trump sends into this conflagration. This war will not be stopped by Donald Trump. Whatever he says from one hour to the next, this war now depends on Iran. Iran has achieved the military political advantage in this war. Whatever the American media tries to spin, whatever the Israel lobby in the United States tries to persuade you, the truth is it's advantage Iran. And I've got a guest coming up who'll tell us if they indeed intend to press home that advantage. Professor Marandi up next after this very, very short break. Stay tuned.
What a great show this is! I listened to it, I thought, wow, what a great show. I've called into your show today, George, because I'm a great caller. Probably the greatest caller you've ever had. I really am. The only way your show could be better is if it had more of me, Donald J. Trump, in it. You keep talking about me, George. You do. I've heard it. I have. So many of the American people, the the best people listen to your show. And I've heard them crying about me. I have, and I listen and I go, ooh, America, don't cry. Don't cry. You need to be careful what you say about me, George. You don't want me to put a tariff on your show like I did with China. And then you'll come running for my help, just like little Zelensky. You know, I know you will. I know these things. Make the mother of all talk shows great again. That's why we're here. That's what we're gonna do, George. We're gonna boost your ratings. Donald is gonna boost them bigly. I'm giving your show the Trump bump. You're welcome, George. Thank me. And remember, nobody talks like me. Nobody calls like me. And absolutely nobody ends a phone call like me. I'm hanging up now. Not because I finished, but because I won.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Will Trump order US boots on the ground in Iran? Well, it's overwhelmingly yes on the poll, though not overwhelmingly. There's a substantial number of people saying no. I would vote no, but you can choose your own outcome. 37,894 people have already voted. Will Trump order US boots on the ground in Iran? You can vote on Telegram, t.me/George Galloway. You can vote on my X. You can vote on the YouTube community stream, poll rather. You can vote on the YouTube stream. If you're watching on the YouTube stream, I need you to subscribe to the channel. I must get to 1 million subscribers, and soon. And if you are one of the advance guard, the avant-garde that support me and the show on patreon.com/George Galloway, there is a ballot box there too, although it's the only one that is completely unanimous. If you want to call the show, it's toll-free in the US and Canada, +1 844 944 3344. In Britain and Ireland, it's free of charge, 0808 196 5522, and the international number 0044 203 966 2625. Well, I promised you the best. He's in the news for a reason that I'm going to ask him first. He's Professor Seyed Mohammad Marandi, Professor of English Literature and Orientalism at the University of Tehran. But he's much, much more than that. As a regular viewer of the show, you already know that. Professor Marandi, welcome again to the show, and thank the Lord that you are safe and well, and may you continue to be so. The best tweet of the month was issued by your friend and mine, Scott Ritter, who took to Twitter, or X, just a few hours ago, and denounced the literal bounty that has been placed on your head by a group. I don't know where they're from, but they are blue tick members. They are in a paid partnership. I don't know what that is either, but you may. And in that tweet of theirs, they are offering $1 million for your capture, presumably then to be tortured and murdered. It's not the most important story of the day, but it's pretty important. Not least because Elon Musk has completely, steadfastly refused to remove the tweet. He's refused to suspend the authors of the tweet. Anyway, Scott Ritter said they've offered this. They're cowards. They've offered to kill Professor Marandi, although they know he's a peaceful man. Scott says, but I am not a peaceful man. So I suggest to you that you raise $1 million to come and capture me. I promise you, it'll be the last thing that you will ever do. Give us your feelings about seeing that tweet in print. It's coming up all the time, mainly by people denouncing it and demanding Musk's action, but action there has been none. Your views on that, Professor?
Well, thank you very much for having me, George. It's always a great honor being with you. I'm not surprised, and I don't think you are either, after your experience at the airport in your home country and how they treated you and how you ultimately had to leave. The world is changing, and the West is becoming much more authoritarian and dangerous very rapidly. Elon Musk and X and other social media, they supported the genocide in Gaza. They supported the slaughter. They censored people for criticizing what was going on. I recall numerous tweets of mine that were deleted. One was a picture of a number of Palestinian children who were massacred, and I wrote above it, Western values, and in scare quotes. And they deleted my tweet. They forced me to delete it. Otherwise, I would no longer be able to use my account. And that happened many times. So this is how they have been treating the Palestinian people. Why not allow people to gather money to kidnap and torture me and kill me? It doesn't surprise me at all. What I think, though, is that it's not going to affect me in any way or form. I'm going to continue to do what I have to do. And my family and my loved ones are all very upset, but it doesn't bother me at all. And George, every night and often during the day, there are millions of people on the streets in Iran, in different countries, as I'm sure you and many of your viewers know. In Tehran right now, as we speak, in different neighborhoods, there are huge crowds chanting in support of the revolution, the armed forces, the constitution, the leader, and rejecting the United States. And they have been bombed on multiple occasions. Western media won't say this, but I've tweeted footage, and I'm sure you have, and I'm sure you've seen it. I was at the Jerusalem Day or Quds Day rally on the last Friday of the month of Ramadan in Tehran. On that day, across the country, they had rallies. It was huge. They fired missiles at the rally. They fired missiles at it. But people didn't budge. They murdered a woman with their missiles. And no one in the Western media, from The Guardian to Breitbart, cared. And they bombed other rallies in the north of Iran, in the city of Anzali, and in the city of Hamadan. But people stood their ground. Young teenage girls, 16-year-olds, they stood their ground. They wouldn't move. So how can I behave differently from that 16-year-old girl, that 15-year-old boy, that 75-year-old woman, that 80-year-old man who stands his ground on the streets of Tehran, on the streets of Anzali Port, on the streets of Hamadan, and elsewhere throughout the country, when these young kids who could be sitting at home and doing what teenagers normally do, but instead they choose to go on the streets from different walks of life. When they are so steadfast, and when the bombs strike, they're unfazed. They do not scream. They just continue chanting, saying that we are the nation of martyrdom, we're the nation of Imam Hussein. We are resolute in our resistance. How can I do anything but what they do? So I will continue to do what I have to do, but it is something that people should keep in mind, that Elon Musk is allowing his platform for people there to gather money to take people hostage and, of course, torture them and murder them. But if you say that if you complain too much about dead Palestinian kids, you could get into trouble.
Well, indeed, and full marks to you for that answer. I expected nothing less from you. Let's turn to the bigger picture. There was a Scottish comedian called Duncan McRae who is facing the Lord on the Judgment Day, and who is told by the Lord that he's going downstairs because of all the bad things that he had done in his life. And he says in the Scottish vernacular to the Lord, "I didn't ken, I didn't know, I didn't ken." And the Lord says, "Well, you ken now, you know now." They know now that they picked the wrong country to try and bully, to try and break. They now know for sure that they've bitten off far more than they are able to chew. All of us who are watching social media know this. Perhaps those watching mainstream media, not so much, but the policy makers, the military brass, and looking at his face and his physical and mental degeneration, Donald Trump knows it too.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And in the coming hours, if Trump decides to strike Iran's critical infrastructure, Iran will force them to pay a price beyond their imagination. Iran is prepared for all-out war. It has not shown its true power yet. It is holding back. And all those family dictatorships in the Persian Gulf, in Qatar, these proxies of the regime in Washington, the Emirates, the Bahraini regime, the Saudi regime, the Kuwaiti regime, all of them, every single one of them, they are complicit in this war. They assisted the United States in slaughtering Iranians. They've been assisting the United States for all these years in all their wars, whether in Yemen or whether in Iraq. When they invaded Iraq, these countries, these regimes, they had funded Saddam Hussein in the 1980s. They gave him hundreds of billions of dollars. But when their masters in Washington told them to turn against Saddam Hussein, they did so immediately. So these regimes will pay the ultimate price within hours. As soon as Trump starts targeting Iran's electrical power plants, everything on the other side of the Persian Gulf will be wrecked. And so my advice to people in these countries is to leave tonight, because we don't know what this madman in Washington wants to do. He is completely irrational. He is moody. He has mood swings. He says one thing now, and he'll say something completely different in an hour from now. So we have no idea where he's going to go, but we're prepared for the worst. And we've already shown him that. The Iranians have already shown him that. When the Israeli regime struck Iran's critical gas infrastructure, with the consent of the United States, Trump is lying that he didn't know. The U.S. did know. If he personally did not know, that just shows how ignorant he is. But when they struck, Iran immediately hit back very hard, and Trump was forced to back off because he knows what this means. So if they strike Iran's critical infrastructure, that will be the end of oil and gas in the Persian Gulf. And the same is true for the regime in Baku, which is a close ally of the Israeli regime. Their oil and gas will no longer be exported in the near future. So Trump has to be very careful, because if this happens, then it no longer matters if the Strait of Hormuz is opened or not. If there is some sort of agreement, there will be no more oil or gas or petrochemicals and no ships to take those non-existent oil and gas and petrochemicals. And that would lead to a global economic crash that the world has never seen in the last century. It will be far worse than 1929. And the world will know that this is Trump's doing. And it is all for Zionism. And if anyone asks, why is Iran striking back at these regimes? Because without their support, without giving the U.S. their airspace, without giving the U.S. their territory, without allowing the U.S. to fire missiles from their territory on a daily basis, there would be no war today. So they are fully complicit. And Iran did not start this war, and Iran did not start striking infrastructure. Everything that Iran has done till now has been in retaliation. So hopefully the madman in Washington, someone will force him to comprehend that the price that he will pay for this is beyond imagination. But Iran is prepared. Iran will not back down. And it is waiting for the 48 hours to finish to see what it has to do.
The madman, as you rightly say, in any other form of life, business, academia, if a professor was behaving like him, if a public servant of any other kind was behaving like him, there would be the flap of white coats. Men would come in to take him away in a straitjacket to a padded cell. The insanity is written all over his face. It's written in every statement he makes on Truth Social. It's written in every press briefing that he gives. I mean, there was a movie called The Madness of King George. This madness is way in excess of the madness of the old English king. But you would hear the flap of white coats, or you'd hear the march of boots as the military brass took the nuclear button away from him. But none of that is happening in the US, even though the vast majority of the American public is opposed to this war. Some of them only because Trump started it. They might well have done it themselves if they had still been in power. But they're pretending at least to be against it, and the public is overwhelmingly against it. And yet, Trump can actually press that button that you mentioned tomorrow, as he's threatened to do. And it will happen unless someone takes the button away. It doesn't say much for the system of so-called democracy, does it, Professor?
No, this is not a democracy. It has never been a democracy. And Europe has never been democratic. And what we're seeing today is basically the end result of this whole project of liberal capitalism. But I don't think this madness is just linked to Trump. Anyone from the Epstein class is mad. Anyone who conducts themselves in such a manner towards children and does the things that we've heard from the Epstein documents, they're mad. Anyone who hides it, whether in the mainstream media, whether it's the presenters or the editors, that madness is very much associated with their behavior as well. Anyone who is not outraged that the Epstein files are hidden away and the real evidence is not out there for the public to see, and that no one of significance is being arrested, there's a madness about them too. Any presenter in Western media which refrain from saying that what happened in Gaza is a genocide, there's madness in that too. So this is not surprising. It's a madhouse. The political elites in the West and those affiliated to them, they all belong in this large madhouse. But the reality will dawn upon them in the coming hours. If they make the wrong move, Iran is prepared to go all the way. We are not backing down. The United States, the Israeli regime have to back down, and they will have to accept Iran's conditions before this war comes to an end. Iran's conditions are not only about Iran, they're about the region, they're about Iran's sovereignty, and they're about the future of threats against Iran in the future. In other words, the Persian Gulf can no longer be a place where these family dictatorships allow it to be used as a foothold to attack Iran or Yemen or Iraq or Syria or Lebanon or anywhere else. And also, Iran has to be compensated for everything that has been done to it. And Iran will do that. The United States will not achieve its goals. This is a dying empire. Things in the United States are not going well at all, and they are going to get a lot worse. But if Trump makes this foolish move, they're going to get a lot worse, a lot faster than they thought it would. And again, I stress to people in the Persian Gulf, no one in Iran wants harm for them, but Iran is forced to retaliate. And so I stress that people should seriously contemplate leaving Qatar tonight, leaving Oman, the Emirates, the Saudi regime, Kuwait, Bahrain, all these entities tonight, because it is quite possible that there will no longer be any electricity or any other critical infrastructure in the coming hours. So again, I stress that if these regimes were not complicit in this war, and they were not complicit in the murder of all these Iranians, we would not have this conflict. And you and I would not be having this discussion. They brought it upon themselves. So we'll all have to wait to see what the madman in the White House does.
Do you include desalination in that? You didn't in your list. Have I overstated the critical importance of drinking water, which is possible only by desalination plants that are literally sitting ducks?
I think that everything is included, George. The fact is that the United States needs this territory to wage war. And the family dictatorships in Qatar and elsewhere, they provided him that. And we have to bring this to an end. So people should leave. The difference between Iran and the United States and the Israeli regime is that when Iran retaliates, it says so beforehand. When they bombed Iran's critical gas infrastructure, all those poor workers who were there, they were facing a catastrophic situation. Missiles were striking the gas installation. Huge fires were erupting, and all these poor workers who received low wages and have kids waiting at home, they could have been burned alive. But Iran, when it retaliated, it said so beforehand. Some people in Iran criticized the armed forces. They said, why are you declaring where you're going to strike the next day? Because they could beef up their air defenses and perhaps shoot down missiles and drones. But the Iranians don't want people to die. And this is exactly what we did during the war with Saddam Hussein as well. When he was firing missiles at Iran, for years Iran did not reply. Ultimately, when it did, when it saw that the international community would not intervene to stop him, Iran would always give 24 hours time for people to leave. So here we have no option. We have to bring the Trump regime to its knees. And the only way to do so is to devastate the Trump regime and make sure that it can no longer use West Asia as a platform to strengthen its empire, to enforce its tyranny. And so, again, I stress that people should leave now. Perhaps he will not carry out this madness, but if he does, Iran will not wait a moment. Iran will strike back very hard, and then perhaps there will be no time for people to leave. My advice would be for them to take their cars and drive towards, I suppose, Iraq or Yemen, or to some other far-off place, Jordan, to be more safe and secure.
I don't normally name and shame specific Gulf dictatorships for a variety of reasons. But I see in the social media this evening that the UAE say that they're going to send their navy to fight you. They're going to send their navy to end this Strait of Hormuz impasse immediately. I responded by saying this is a fly threatening an elephant. Are they really serious, these tiny, narrowly based family tyrannies threatening the gigantic Islamic Republic of Iran? Or is this just fluff, chaff?
George, look at Al Jazeera and in the comment section in Arabic and English and see what the views of Arabs are about these dictatorships. They despise all of them, except for those who are on the payroll, because they all know that they're sellouts. They all know that they're proxies of the United States, every single one of them, in different ways. The UAE has a passport-holding population of 1 million and a couple of 100,000, a small, very small city in Iran. But more importantly, it has millions of people who are workers, who are indentured servants. Do they think that they can control these people when things get tough and they no longer have electricity? The ruling elites will flee the country before anyone else does, if they haven't already left. The same is true in Qatar. What can Qatar do with a population of 400,000? They've only destroyed Syria and wrecked Iraq and Yemen and the Emirates, of course. They've destroyed the Horn of Africa, all of them working for the interests.
Oh, that is a great pity that we have momentarily, I hope, lost Professor. Professor, are you still there?
George.
I'm very glad because
Yes,
I
I
have
can
some
hear you.
more important. Yeah, I have some other important questions to ask you. May I move on? I think we got your message loud and clear. But the Western media and Piers Morgan, your friend and mine in particular, were crying in the week that Iran had fired 2 missiles at the UK, in inverted commas, the UK military base in Diego Garcia. And it's 4,000 kilometers away, whilst Iran hitherto was imagined and had stated its maximum range was 2,000, and that A, this made you liars, and B, it meant that Piers Morgan's studio might get one of these missiles down its chimney. Did Iran fire 2 missiles which narrowly missed their target in Diego Garcia? Or was that somebody else that did that?
Iranians have said that they did not fire those missiles. And they also say that they did not fire missiles towards Türkiye or Oman. And therefore, those we must conclude that these are false flag operations. But just one thing that I wanted to add, George, is that with regards to the Persian Gulf, the Emirates, with a passport-holding population of 1 million, if push comes to shove, the resistance in Iraq, a country with 45 to 47 million people, in Yemen, if they move into the Arabian Peninsula, who is going to stop them? If the resistance in Iraq takes over Kuwait, if Yemen enters Saudi Arabia, if Iran intensifies its attack, and if their key infrastructure is destroyed, they will fall immediately. All of these regimes will fall. So the Emirates is in no position to threaten Iran. they've already did more than enough harm to the Iranian people and helped the slaughter of all those little children in Minab. So the smart thing for the Emirates to do would be to call their masters in Washington and their masters in Tel Aviv and start licking their boots and begging them not to carry out their threats, because these regimes will pay the ultimate price.
Finally, Professor, and I'm always grateful for your time, especially in the arduous circumstances in which you find yourself. This all started because of Palestine. The real gripe that the West has with the Islamic Republic of Iran is that uniquely, more or less, they have never forgotten Palestine, and that they never will, and that their declared intention, their article of faith, is to do whatever they can to rescue the Palestinian people from their ongoing calvary. You, not Nasser, not Saddam Hussein, no king, no emir, have ever made Israel pay for its crimes against the Palestinian people, against the Lebanese, and many others, in the way that Iran has over this last 3 weeks. And millions, maybe more than millions, are glued to whatever footage they can find. And it seems that you are more or less punishing Israel at will now. If you can land missiles at Dimona, the secret of all secrets, the best or worst kept secret in history, Israel's nuclear weapons plant, you can land them anywhere. And now that your country is bombing Israel 24/7, is there any possibility that the Palestinian people can look forward to some salvation in whatever agreement you agree to make at the end of all this?
I think that at the end of all this, there will have to be an agreement, as I said earlier. There will, without a doubt, be an agreement which includes all of Iran's allies in West Asia. I should also add, though, George, and I know you know this, that the heroic resistance in Lebanon has really been stunning during the past few weeks. I recall how after drawing away the Israeli army from Gaza for many, many months, and then ultimately the Israeli regime carrying out strikes in Lebanon and murdering Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah, after weeks of heavy fighting and the slaughter of so many innocent Lebanese supporters of resistance, when there was a ceasefire, these people on the payroll of Qatar and Erdogan and the Mohammed bin Salman and Mohammed bin Zayed, these allies of empire, they were ridiculing Hezbollah, saying that they failed. They were, despite all the suffering that the resistance did for the people of Gaza, to save the Palestinian children in Gaza. These people who were on the payroll, receiving their dollars, working for their media outlets, working in their so-called cultural centers or religious centers, these so-called intellectuals, they were constantly trying to ridicule and humiliate the resistance in Lebanon after all the heroic work that they did. But look at what they're doing now. They said that Hezbollah was destroyed, but look at Hezbollah today, hitting the regime day and night. And this is all for the people of Palestine. This is all because of the injustices and the genocide, the ongoing genocide in Gaza. Ultimately, George, this Israeli regime will not last. The world has woken up. And the fake allies of the Palestinian people, the fake allies, they've exposed themselves. But the people in their countries support Palestine. The government in Türkiye continues to send transport oil. And Azerbaijan and the Republic of the Dictatorship in Azerbaijan produces that oil. They have relations. They cooperate. They allow the US and Israeli military to gather intelligence against Iran. The same is true in Jordan. The same is true in Saudi Arabia. But the people have woken up to the reality. They see their regimes are dishonest and they want something different. And people across the world are waking up. And one reason why I think that Trump and the Trump regime are waging this war is because the Zionists in the United States know that in the future they cannot do this again. The youth in the United States have turned against the regime. The people my age are turning against the regime. Even older people are gradually turning against the regime. So in future, they cannot manipulate American society like they do today. They won't be able to do it in Europe either, and they cannot do it in our region. The regimes that are complicit and have cooperated with the Israeli regime, they will all be swept away in one way or another, and the people will be empowered. And ultimately, it is not going to be a value for Zionist Jews to live under these circumstances. They can no longer live safely while slaughtering people. And no one is going to invest in occupied Palestine anymore, because those companies and those businesses could be bombed at any time. I'm optimistic about the future. These are dark days. They may get much darker, but there is light at the end of the tunnel. Everyone should mobilize. Everyone should be active wherever they are and be optimistic about the future. No one should live in despair, no matter how difficult things get in the days and weeks ahead.
Well, I kept you a long time, Professor, but it definitely was worth it for us, and I hope you'll forgive me for the length of this interview. It remains for me to issue my customary and forever respect, my salute, and my thoughts and prayers for your people and for my favorite Iranian and the favorite Iranian of millions. That's why they're offering $1 million to capture you. Professor Seyed Mohammad Marandi, God bless you and keep you. Thank you for your time on the mother of all talk shows. Let me go straight to the calls because the switchboard is melting, and I did keep that interview going a long time. I hope you agree that it was worth it. Okay, from New Jersey in the US is Chairman Africa in New Jersey, but wants to talk about the Middle East. Chairman, welcome.
All power to the people, comrade. All power to the people. Hey, I'm gonna tell Professor Marandi, challenge accepted. In August 1970, the Black Panther Party leader Huey P. Newton offered to send BPP members to Vietnam to fight alongside the National Liberation Front against U.S. forces. That was in 1970. Today, we are here in Newark, New Jersey. We work in Newark, and we are listening to what's going on around the world. And we still believe we are part of the world. We are still fighting and struggling as members of the world community. We fight for the people. I want to say something, and it's very important, Professor. It's very important. Right now in Newark, New Jersey, the people living here have to pay about $2,500 for rent. Our schools are teaching reading and mathematics at a 5% proficiency and a 6% proficiency. To be able to afford to live, you have to make about $80,000. The average income here in Newark, New Jersey is $35,000 a year. So it's almost impossible to survive. Remember, you have to work 2-3 jobs to be able to pay rent and buy food. These are the people we are talking about. Now, when you listen to the leaders, you listen to academics, like Mark Lamar Hill. He will say what's going on in Iran will not affect the people here. I disagree. You see, we're the people on the ground. Nobody speaks to us. When they cut off the Strait of Hormuz, when they start to fight and Iran wins, the price of everything is going to go up here. Gas is going up. Food is going up. We already can't afford to eat or places to stay. Look, if anybody's listening that don't believe me, look up Rutgers Crime Report. It will tell you everything I'm telling you, how people are suffering. The people don't want to go to war. The people in these communities are starving. We have programs to educate the people, to feed the people, all of this for free. We offer political education classes, everything for free. Because if you want to save the people, you want to serve the people, you must educate them. You must give them political education. You must feed them, and you must house them. This is what we are doing in our communities in 2026 for free, because we believe we belong to the people, just like we belong to the people in Iran. The people in Iran in the streets fighting for their liberation. We stand with those people because we are here in the belly of empire, and we are suffering. The people are sleeping in the streets in snowstorms while they're using money to go pay for rockets. The Black Panther Party is here to serve the people because we understand only in serving the people and educating the masses can you defeat the Epstein class. You cannot defeat these people by talking, by making deals, just how they go to the United Nations and they trample on all the laws, break every single law and face nothing. It's the same thing they do to us here. They take our homes, they shoot our kids in the back, they brutalize us, they make us work 3 jobs, and there's no way to hold any of these people accountable. The only way to hold them accountable is by going into the communities, just like Mao Zedong said. Go inside the fields, the farms, and get the people in those farms and educate those people. Put revolution in them, and they will overtake the empire. I'm telling Professor Marandi, by the time I leave this planet, I'm in my 40s, I will find my way to Iran to meet you because you are a comrade. Keep up the struggle and keep us informed. But we are doing all we can in Newark, New Jersey. And Professor, I need you to bring us up sometime for us to talk about all the work we do. We stood up to ICE. Google it. Look on the YouTube. Google Newark, New Jersey, Panthers against ICE. Google Philadelphia Panthers against ICE. We stand up to ICE and we make them back down. I told the ICE officer, if you grab that mace, I will take it from you and mace you. He had to put the mace away. It's on video. You can organize the community. You can organize the people to stand up. But it takes people that love the people, that care about the people, that are not in love with materialism, like the Epstein class. Those people do not.
Well, Chairman, I must say, we've had many brilliant calls on this show over the many years that we've been doing it, but I'm not sure we've ever had a more powerful call than that. Chairman Africa in New Jersey, North New Jersey, on the Middle East. Now look, it's important, very important, that I acknowledge those who keep this program going week after week. Your support allows us to stay independent and to continue bringing you the show. It's why we don't have advertisers, why we don't have sponsors. We need you to avoid that fate. And so with that in mind, I want to specially thank this week Lynn Timperley, M.N. Baig, Arash Shoji, Carlos Navarro Fernandez, and the redoubtable, ubiquitous George J. Ashkar Jr. A big, big thanks to all of you who generously donated this week, and to all of you who donated £1, $1, €1, which I know you're going to repeat after tonight's show at moats.tv. Will Trump order US boots on the ground in Iran? 43,000 people have now voted. And, well, it's about 60-40 that Trump will order US troops on the ground. So that's a good moment to say that right after this very short break, a man that was a US soldier and is a soldier for peace and justice, Dr. Christopher Helali, will be up right after this break. Stay tuned.
Many people today struggle with the common mainstream media consumer. These types of people are mindless zombies. Instead of living authentically, they feed off masking their true thoughts and feelings, doing nothing and criticizing those who actually do their research. These type of media consumer can be highly manipulative, so here are some golden standard clapbacks when they start with their propaganda. When they say you are too much for them, show them a mirror and tell them to look for less. Draw a diagram of where your business is and their business is, to visually show them they are in the wrong area. When they say, please watch this clip from this reputable BBC journalist, remind them that there are no longer any reputable BBC journalists, and to instead watch the mother of all talk shows for some real journalism. The next time you encounter a brainwashed zombie, hold your head high and know their obsession to eat your brain is masking their jealousy of your confidence, your freedom in self-expression, and most importantly, your authenticity. Keep listening to learn more on the mother of all talk shows.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Researcher, political analyst and journalist Dr. Christopher Helali is a personal friend of mine, but that's not why he's here. He's here because of the crystal clarity of his analysis of what lies beneath, what lay behind the launching of this and indeed many other wars. If you haven't seen him before on the mother of all talk shows, you're in for a treat. Dr. Christopher, thanks for joining us, particularly as I know you've just hosted your own show, because I was watching it just before I came on air. I hope you've got some voice left. It looks to me, Doctor, that Donald Trump is in a kind of meltdown, that he's in the middle of a nervous breakdown. I know he's always been erratic. I know he's always been undependable in the course that he takes, but we're now seeing such violent mood swings and such criminal threats being issued almost hourly. And as Professor Marandi just told the audience, if he carries out his latest, it will basically be the end of organized economic life in the whole of the Western world, and not just the Western world. If I'm right, and that he is in a kind of nervous breakdown, can nothing be done to stop him? I mean, does the US Constitution seriously permit an unhinged individual to destroy his own country out of a desire to hide the crimes of the Epstein class?
Thank you very much for having me, George. It's always a pleasure to be with you. Sadly, we have a situation much akin to when Nero was playing his fiddle and watching Rome burn, that we see Trump bringing down the temple down on all of us. And I think that it's very important to note here that you're absolutely right that Trump's behaviors have been much more erratic, much more indicative of his elder years, and of serious mental decline. We said the same about Joe Biden, which was absolutely true. But this is also the same with Trump, albeit a little bit different. We know from the past that Trump uses a variety of medications, and we've seen from some images a drawer full of them from his past administration. But it looks in his elder years and with all of the stress and I'm sure the unhealthy lifestyle that he leads, that this is contributing to this. Now, you ask about the U.S. Constitution. There are provisions constitutionally to remove a president who is incapacitated or has mentally degraded to the point of not being able to make proper decisions, but that has to be verified. There are numerous sort of guidelines as to how that can happen. It has to be done with medical professionals. It has to be signed off. There have to be numerous mechanisms that have to be worked out, and in the process for that to take place, it's never, to my knowledge, happened before in the U.S. history. Of course, we've had presidents who've been assassinated. We've had presidents who have left office for resignation, right, or who have been impeached and then resigned. But we've never had a situation where somebody has been at this state of ill health in terms of their mental health and been removed. But you're certainly right. He does have the briefcase. He has the controls of the nuclear weapons. He has controls over the largest military in world history in terms of its power and reach and potential. And so it's very dangerous. The situation that we're in is one that not only shatters the global order as we know it, but certainly in U.S. politics and in the U.S. government, it has shattered many people's visions and ideas about what a Trump presidency would bring. People voted in a ticket that was no new wars, no endless wars, no regime change wars, much like Tulsi and others had advocated for. And in fact, what have we gotten? 8 countries bombed within 1 year, from Venezuela, Nigeria, Iran, and elsewhere. And for me, this war was a war of choice. It was not an existential war. It was not necessary. And I think that this erratic behavior, which seems to model the market and seems to model, this back and forth kind of personality, this is the sad reality of electing somebody who has a background in show business than somebody who is a career diplomat or somebody who is an educated, astute philosopher, political scientist, theorist, a person of letters, as we say, like Putin, like Xi Jinping, like the late Ayatollah Khamenei and Larijani and so many others who are very astute, very wise in their statesmanship. Sadly, we are run by cowboys, and even worse than cowboys. They're not even that well educated. At least cowboys understood the streets. I don't even think Trump understands or has any sort of connection with the pulse of America, which is feeling the effects of his irrational decision-making now as it affects their wallets, it affects their cars and their transportation and their food and their livelihoods.
Now, amongst your many achievements, you've lived many lives for being such a young man. You were once a U.S. military officer, and a distinguished one. And there are others, Scott Ritter, ditto, Lieutenant Colonel Aguilar, who was on the show on Wednesday, Colonel Douglas McGregor, Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis, and so many others. So you definitely are able to put yourself in the place of the U.S. Marine Corps, 2,500 of them, the 82nd Airborne, who we're told are going to be sent on what is, by any definition, a suicide mission, a mission that literally could only end in disaster. What's your feeling if you are one of those soldiers? What's the chatter amongst the U.S. military? We know about the sailors on the U.S. aircraft carriers who sure didn't fancy clearing the Strait of Hormuz and have made sure that their aircraft carrier is no longer capable of doing so in any case. Just tell us what's in the mind of the U.S. military and their parents, their wives, who may never see them again after this suicide mission has been mounted.
Well, certainly, I think that many of them are feeling apprehension. There's no clear objectives. There's no clear understanding of what they're going to do. There's not even a full mission package, I assume, at this point that's been drafted. It's all military orders and military strategy by tweet or by Truth Social. This is not the way to conduct military operations. It's extremely dangerous. They understand, of course, I'm sure many of the officers understand that Iran is not Afghanistan and not Iraq. Iran is much older, much bigger, much larger population, much more deeply entrenched government structure, military forces, militia, and their religious tradition and their religious belief and their faith in their country, not only their nationalism, but also their religious faith, drives and motivates them to destroy any aggressor, any invader. So they must understand that they're going into an extremely hostile situation. They're not going into a situation with people with sandals and Kalashnikovs, who themselves still defeated the US after 20 years, we must note. Still defeated and gave the US not one defeat, but two defeats in Iraq and in Afghanistan. We must know that for them, I'm sure the youngest of them are thinking to themselves, I just thought I was going to get an education. I thought I was going to have a good career. I thought that we were going to go and, there were not going to be any major wars. And I was going to, skirt in 4 years and out, or maybe do an easy career. Now, of course, for the Marines especially, they are thinking to themselves, there has not been an amphibious assault of this order and magnitude in decades. So this has only been practice. Now they're going to storm beaches in reality, and not only the beaches, they're going to storm beaches that are going to put a lot of bodies, sadly, in coffins very quickly. And I think that they understand this. They understand that Iran, if they are watching our programs, if they understand beyond the propaganda, they understand that Iran is a strong nation and that Iranians will fight. They, I'm sure, have commanders who have deployments in Iraq and Afghanistan. I've spoken to many of my brothers in arms, many who have worn the uniform as I have. Lieutenant Colonel Aguilar, I just had on my show, and Lieutenant Colonel Karen Kiakowski. And we spoke and we said, look, the warfighting today of our soldiers who have experienced combat, they understand that this is, first and foremost, no easy task. Second of all, they understand that they failed. They failed because the government in the past, the Bush administration, the Obama administration, they failed to provide clear guidance as to what was to be done, and they did nation building. These are soldiers. These are meant to go in and out. So they're thinking to themselves, we're going to go in there, we're going to have to hold a position, and we don't even know how long we're going to go in there for. Is it regime change? Is it to take Karga Island? Is it to take the coast? What are we supposed to do? And then how are we supposed to deal? And you have to now imagine, when I joined the military, drone warfare was a thing of the future. Okay, we had some of the bigger drones that were... And what's been seen so far in Iran with these Shahed drones flying everywhere, you have to imagine that a soldier is thinking to themselves, I might not even see the enemy. I'm only going to hear that little buzzing sound as these drones come hit our positions. And if I'm an officer, I was an officer. If I'm an officer, I'm thinking, number one, I've read this in the history books. I've maybe experienced it in combat tours, and now I'm going into a much worse situation. Number two, I'm probably thinking to myself, how can I conscientiously object and get out of this? For those who are diehard and gung-ho, I hope they're prepared, because medals from this campaign will not come easy. And I guarantee you that the Iranians will put up a fierce resistance that the US hasn't seen since Vietnam. And they will experience something unlike anything else. And even the Taliban and the Iraqi resistance gave the US a run for their money. And we know this because the US constantly talks about Iranian-made bombs, roadside bombs, IEDs. I talked to this with Lieutenant Colonel Aguilar, and you know what he said? He said, why would we not understand why they did it? We went from the US to Iraq. We went to their border. They didn't come to us. So, of course they're going to defend. Of course the resistance in Iraq is going to defend themselves with whatever means that they have. So they have to understand that they're going into hostile territory. They're going into somebody else's country. So if I put myself in the mindset of a Marine or a paratrooper in the 82nd, I graduated airborne school, right? I have my airborne wings. I have to imagine that this is going to be, for many of them, a one-way ticket. And if you're their family members and you maybe voted for Trump on the belief, no new wars, America first, we're going to strengthen America's military and focus on defense and focus on immigration and the border, they have to be thinking to themselves, we didn't vote for this. We didn't want this. And already we've seen videos of some of the family members of those who've already been killed. and families are crying out and saying, this was not necessary. This was an unnecessary war. This is not in America's interest. We have no idea why we are there. And this is deeply divided American society. I actually just saw an article before I came on air from Huffington Post that said that soldiers already are speaking anonymously, that they don't want to die for Israel, that they don't believe in this war. I think that you could see Vietnam-level defections and conscientious objections and people not going forward with deployments if it is really going to ramp up in the way that some believe it is going to.
Let's turn to Israel then, because this is really the core of the matter, whether from your Secretary of State's own words, Rubio told us he had to walk it back in the parlance, but he told us on camera, I saw his lips moving, that the United States entered this war because Israel was about to attack Iran, and they realized that Iranian retaliation would quickly envelop all the US forces that they had foolishly sent there and unnecessarily sent there. So you are doing this for Israel. I think a record number of American citizens now know that. But Israel too has discovered that it has bitten off more than it can chew. You know Iran very well. You know it better than me. Are you surprised in any way at the ease with which and the power with which Iran is punishing Israel over these last 3 weeks?
I have to say that I am surprised at the resilience of the Iranian nation for 47 years of sanctions, brutal sanctions. We're talking about, this kind of maximalist sanctions, tens of thousands of sanctions on Iran, on all aspects of Iranian life that have caused tremendous damage to the population. But still, Iran has been the foremost in educating its people, the foremost in advanced degrees in science and technology. And you see domestically, and Professor Marandi, who we had on, our dear friend, and someone who I look up to, when he spoke to me and spoke about the history of the missile program, it was born out of a desire to have something domestic that they controlled, that they built from their own hands. And so they learned from others. They traveled, they studied, they opened the books, and they made a lot of things from scratch. They understood and took apart and reverse engineered Scud missiles from Soviet Union. They reverse engineered other missiles that they were able to capture. And what did they do with their enormous potential of human power, brain power? They were able to do things that were unimaginable. Can you imagine you and I sitting together a few years ago and saying that Iran would successfully hit Dimona? I can't imagine it. For me, it's unbelievable. Those sites are, and it shows that the emperor has no clothes. And not only that, it shows the vulnerabilities and weakness of a country that puffs its chest up, that barks, but actually cannot do a lot in this situation. They've overstretched themselves. They've overexerted themselves. They are so drunk on the blood of Palestinians, of Lebanese, of Syrians, of Iranians, that now this desire to go and to start this war unnecessarily in the midst of negotiations again, by the way, in the midst of diplomacy, to unleash this war, Iran has shown that it is prepared for the long haul. And Iran has, for those who don't know, Iran's military doctrine is called decentralized mosaic defense. What does that mean? It means that Iranians, even though in the West we like to portray them in an Orientalist fashion, they're just a bunch of brown people, stupid in the mountains, Iranians are very astute, very educated. Our people are extremely educated. And what did Iranians do? We read Mao, we read Che, we understood Algeria, we understood Vietnam, we understood Angola, Namibia. Anywhere there has been a struggle of resistance, we understood the tactics. And we understood that, of course, if the US comes, it's more powerful. It's a conventional army. If Israel comes, they're both nuclear powers. But what we can do is we can have time on our side, because every successful insurgency, every successful revolutionary struggle has time to slowly bite at the enemy, to slowly take apart its logistics, to go after the places that it has resources, to stretch it out, and to create chaos in the core country, in the belligerent country, in the aggressor, so that their populations become demoralized. They don't want to pay more. They don't want to expend more blood and treasure. They get tired and fed up. But for the home country, they are never tired and fed up. That's why we see the Palestinian resistance for 70 plus years. That's why we see the resistance in Lebanon. That's why we see the resistance in Iran. That's why we see the resistance in Iraq and in Yemen. That's their homeland. They'll never give up. Their children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren will continue to fight so long as the enemy comes to their door. So that's the difference. Iran is prepared for this, and Iran is prepared to lose all of its leadership. This has already been factored in. They have a four-person plan. If 3 people die, they still have a 4th replacement for all positions. Military, political, you name it. There are 4 successors already known before the first bullet fired. That's the strength of the Iranian government. That's the strength of Iranian institutions. That's what the propaganda in the West didn't have their populations believe. They believed that they would go with roses, like we heard in Iraq War, in Persian Gulf too, right? They said in 2003, they're going to have carpets and roses and flowers, and they're going to greet us as heroes. Well, they greeted you with IEDs. They greeted you in Fallujah. And how many other places did they greet you? In Sadr City, you name it, they greeted the US soldiers. The same is true here, but now with technological superiority, with hypersonic missiles, with drones, with speedboats that go and take out oil tankers. This is something that they didn't calculate. They assumed that they could have a Venezuela-style victory. They failed. They failed because they were drunk on their own propaganda. They were drunk on their own hubris. Let this be a lesson that the ancients once told about narcissism and hubris, and those who tried to reach the sun without preparation and without knowledge and discipline and without understanding, they will burn and they will fail. And that's what's happening now. Israel now wants to take all south of the Litani River. Let them try. But Hezbollah is giving them a run for their money. And we're seeing it on our screens day in and day out. This is something that I think is going to change the entire map of the region. And it will never be the same again after this.
On that subject, and of course you're displaying not just the fact that you are an officer, but that you're a scholar, and we're all grateful for it. Professor Marandi, just moments ago, talked to us about the tantalizing possibility that the entire map of the region will be redrawn before this conflict is over. He pointed out that the Iraqi resistance could invade and take Kuwait, for example. He talked about how Yemen could enter Saudi Arabia. Who's going to stop them? We know that these fake states are defenseless, other than the United States armaments that they sold them at inflated prices, but that they can only genuinely use if the Americans are there. And now the Americans are not there. They've left Iraq, they've left the Gulf entirely. They've removed themselves from the theater of operations. So if the resistance, maybe even with Iranian support, who knows, these puppet regimes, these revolting satrapies, these corrupt family businesses that run the Gulf, they may all be swept away. Of course, they will escape in their private jets, and who knows, maybe their people will welcome the change. But big changes, there may very well be. What do you think?
I absolutely agree. I think that we're in for many big changes. I think the weakest link of them all is in Bahrain. For those who don't know, Bahrain was part of Iran until the 1970s, until an agreement which gave Bahrain its independence. But Bahrain is run by a Sunni minority and by a family that are corrupt gangsters, as you said. And this is a hereditary monarchy. And right now they have a population, they have 80% of their population are Shia. They look to Iran. They've already had 2 revolts in the past 2 decades. and they are entering a third one. And just today, I have news that Saudi Arabia has authorized the sending of its military and police forces with other neighboring GCC states to ensure that Bahrain does not fall, because they are worried that if Bahrain falls, which is it's the weakest domino of this link, that if Bahrain falls, then it probably will ally itself with Iran, with a Shia majority that take power, and that Iran will now have a foothold in the Gulf in a way that it doesn't necessarily have yet. And they are worried about their own monarchies and their own corrupt regimes. So I think Bahrain is to be watched. I think certainly Qatar is to be watched. We're seeing a lot of movement in the UAE and Saudi Arabia in terms of their domestic militaries and policies, because they understand the severity of this situation. If things get out of hand and there is attack on oil infrastructure, energy infrastructure, and water infrastructure, this could have long-lasting consequences. And let's not forget, the Saudis have oppressed their own Shia minority and have killed their leaders to the great, of course, displeasure and open condemnation of Iran. So there's a lot at stake here, and Yemen hasn't even fully entered the situation yet. If Yemen gets in with its powerful military, with its ballistic and hypersonic missiles, with its drone capabilities, with its assets in the Red Sea and the Bab al-Mandeb, I think that we can see profound transformations on the map. I already think that we're going to see transformations on the map in Lebanon, because I do not believe that the Israelis can give Hezbollah a run for its money. I think that there's a lot of heavy fighting happening. I am confident in the resistance in Lebanon, and confident that there will be a pushing back of the Israeli forces from even the territory that it sees and the little sort of forward operating bases that it had, which Hezbollah wanted to get rid of, but the Lebanese government was too weak and too beholden to the West to do that. I think that we could see many things now, and certainly the Iraqi resistance has a big role to play here and a lot of possibilities. I think that the next couple days are going to be very indicative of where this is headed.
Well, there are decades when nothing happens. We're definitely living in the weeks where decades are happening, and you've helped us understand it. Dr. Christopher Helali, thank you very much for joining us again on the mother of all talk shows. Hope to see you soon, my friend. Let me take a quick break. Then it's your calls, right up to Gayatri's social media news roundup. We need to get a snappier title for that. I'll be right back. He's a schoolyard bully, Piers Morgan. And he does have a big show, but then he has a big and plush and very well appointed studio. And he has a big and very well paid staff. He has a very big budget. He's an extremely wealthy man. And the combination of all of that does give you a certain head start. We, on the other hand, are a mom and pop business. There's just me and Gayatri. And the people who told me the phones are melting are my own grandchildren who are answering the phones for nothing. This is an unpaid gig I'm doing and do twice a week. Nobody pays me one brass farthing to make this show, to present this show. I'm not sure that Piers Morgan would tell you how much he makes.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Well, there's a call from my beloved Beirut, capital of the Lebanon, where Zuhair wants to talk about the current situation there. Zuhair, welcome.
Good evening, Mr. George. Good evening. My deepest and respectful salutations your way from Beirut.
Thank you. Thank you.
Where it is,
Thank you.
where I'm going to tell you, it's actually raining here.
The situation is catastrophic, yeah?
It is quite chaotic. It is. We're always. Beirut is always on the edge, sitting on the threshold of the edge. So, but we're always optimistic, and I want to talk about a few points here. It's raining now, and in Beirut currently, and we have thousands, maybe hundreds, thousands of people, babies, in tents on the streets. A lot has been displaced from the south. Recently in Beirut, the bombardment was chaotic. It's quite tight, the situation between the people. Also, the media, the Western media. I want to talk about the media. There's a small part of the people that gets influenced by the Western media, so there's a kind of a division that is created. There's a lot of people that say that, but I want to say that no, the Lebanese people are together. They are coexisting together. A lot of people from the north are opening their doors, their homes, and this is our Lebanon. This is how it should be always. Maybe a small part of people get influenced by the media, and they throw in some news to corrupt. And today we just saw the real story of this is the main point. The Litani was bombarded heavily. The Minister of Cuts, I think Cuts of Israel, he ordered the destruction of the bridge over the river to isolate the people from the south. And they hit the infrastructure, but the resistance in the north are still hitting back. They are still hitting back quite nice. They're doing their job. And the Khiyam in the south, this is the attraction there is happening. And there is, and they ordered from the people of the north to evacuate, so there will not be some consequences for the people. And only they will hit the military targets. And there is a guy called, I think, Ofer Moskovich. He was a base. He was hit by a missile from the Hezbollah in south.
Moskovich sounds like he's a real local. That's a real Middle Eastern name. Now you're talking about places that I know very well, Zuhair. Khayam, which was the torture chamber of the former Israeli occupation. I visited the torture cells. I've spoken to those who survived and who were liberated by the Lebanese resistance, and the Israelis were chased out of their previous occupation. I have known the Litani as the border that Israel would like to have in its greater Israel dreams. Practically all of my adult life. I first entered your country in 1977, which is a long time ago by anybody's standards. But the Lebanese have always resisted, and now they have a level of resistance which they have never had before. Certainly it's a 21st century level of resistance. You mentioned the small number, I think you're being generous, of people influenced by the Western media. But it isn't just the media, Zuhair. You've got a treasonous government. Your president is a traitor to the country. Your prime minister is a traitor to the country. It's very difficult to see if these traitors try to disarm the Lebanese resistance, who are the only thing standing between the invaders and the capital itself, that the army will not split. As it did, of course. I used to drive through the Lebanese Arab Army checkpoints at the Litani River, and they were the patriotic breakaway from the Lebanese army, who would not agree in the 70s to disarm the Palestinian resistance at that time, of course, a very powerful force in Lebanon. So it's hard to see, for me, as somebody who loves Lebanon with all my heart, it's hard to see how the country can continue in the shape and form that it is. What's your take on that?
Actually, I had the same question. Kind of is it like the Israel Gaza model, let's say, of destroying homes and bridges, is actually a sign of like their military desperation because they can't handle the surprise combat of the resistance on the ground? And
that's absolutely correct. Yeah. All they can do is destroy people and homes from the skies. That's all they can do. And now that Syria was destroyed as a matter of deliberate policy by the West and its how shall I put it, its slaves in certain Arab countries, Syria is no longer a means by which the Lebanese people can properly acquire the methods they would need to properly defend themselves. So I'm just wondering if you think that your country's current leadership can be counted on to defend Lebanon, or are they in fact a fifth column for Israeli occupation?
I would say not. I would say that they are nonchalant over their people and over also the resistance mainly, and they are mainly swinging towards the Western and Israeli regime. Or to tell you the truth, unfortunately, and this is kind of obvious because people are waking up, Mr. Galloway, and all over the world, and this is what's happening in Lebanon right now.
In Beirut, thank you for your candor. I won't invite you to say more or stay on the line any longer. Thank you very much indeed for your call. Now, you can leave comments. If you scan the QR code on your screen now, you can leave comments, and I'll try and get to them. Mourns Lad says, unbelievable that we have had two cognitively impaired U.S. presidents in succession. And Uzi 1mm, great name, says, oh yeah, he absolutely has dementia. And Locks 75 says diesel is £1.70 a litre in the UK. Well, trust me, there won't be any at the pumps a week or two from now if Donald Trump does what he's promised to do tomorrow. Engineering for today says water will be more expensive than oil in the Middle East. Forget Dubai. Habibi, definitely leave. Nick Donovan, who sends $100 US. That's a mighty fine donation, Nick. Thank you for that. To all of the Moats listeners around the world standing for truth and justice, we honor you with this small gift. Bless you, George, and all of the Moats family. Nick and Tony in Los Angeles. A big thanks, Nick and Tony, and nothing small about that donation. Thank you very much indeed. My old friend Declan in Dublin, he wants to talk about the treatment of the North Korean and Iranian women in the Winter Games. Tell me more, Declan.
No, I've been keeping an eye on football competitions since the 1966 World Cup, when North Korea were the big heroes, especially in the town of Middlesbrough in northern England. It's a fantastic story. Since then, I have never seen any group in a competition treated as badly as the Iranians in particular were in the recent Women's Asian Cup finals in Australia. The American and Israeli Waffen-SS and Luftwaffe strafed Iran on the 28th of February, murdering their leaders, their religious and civil leaders, etc., etc. On the 28th of February, 2 days later, the Iranian women had their first game, and they were all over the place. They conceded 9 goals. They scored 0 goals. Now, they obviously went into that tournament with a plan, and the plan was blown out of the water, as were their people back home. And they were chased the way hounds would chase a hare. And some of them defected, and I've put this to pro-Palestinian activists and anybody who'd want to get out of Gaza or Iran or former Syria when it's being levelled. So, of course, some of the women thought about staying in Australia, but the pressure on them was unrelenting and was totally against all the rules of sportsmanship. They were hounded, and it was obvious in the scores and in how they held together. They were trying to keep their thing together as these MEK and Pahlavi savages were given free rein against them. The other line of attack on them was, of course, wearing the hijab. And I personally believe, and I have some moral authority in this, as you do, but those other people don't. I personally believe that women in sport should follow the science and wear what's best suitable for women's sport. That has changed in England since 1971, and there's loads of academic and scientific papers suggesting what women should wear. In Ireland, in Camogie, which is a women's game in Ireland, there was a change just a couple of months ago from what women wore, because the women wanted to be more comfortable playing the game. But these people who are bombing Muslim women around the clock, when they're not bombing women, they take a 5-minute break to go on about wearing the hijab. Now, most of those women have gone back, and I just feel sorry on a human level for all of them. But MEK, I don't have to tell you about MEK, except they have huge parliamentary support here in Ireland. They pay $1,000 a minute to these Irish politicians who can't string a word, never mind a sentence, together. And as regards Mr. Pahlavi, or I was going to call him Pavlova, but Pavlova is named after a Russian. So the Russians are in the naughty corner as well. But he went to Jerusalem as I did, right? And the difference between him, the two of us went to the Wailing Wall. I paid my money, so I went to the Wailing Wall. I went to the Russian Orthodox church where Princess Alice is buried, and I also went to the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Now, I'm not a Muslim, and this character who wants to be the chief bottle washer of Iran, which is largely Muslim, he wouldn't even walk around the corner to go into the mosque, even for form's sake. Okay, so the treatment of those Iranian women in Australia is a disgrace to Australia. They've since a little bit. It's a disgrace to FIFA, and fair play to those women who've gone back to Iran, and good luck to the two women.
That's right. And most of them definitely have, Declan, as always, a tour of the Horizon and a tour de force. Now, you can download the Moats podcast by scanning that QR code on the corner of the screen now. You can listen also to the Moats podcast via the Moats.tv website. And once you've listened, please leave a review. It helps us to grow the podcast, and more people are knowing about it. This week, we are in the top 10 for politics in Ghana, Jordan, Zimbabwe, and Mauritius. And we rank in top 20 for politics in Russia, Bahrain, Peru, and finally, Ireland too, Declan. Now, let's go, having spoken about Ireland, to Scotland, where Gary wants to talk about Iran and Trump. Welcome, Gary. What would you like to say?
Mr. Galloway, how are you?
I'm good, by the grace of God. What do you want to say?
I just want to say that Trump's spitting off a lot more Iran than he can chew.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And so have the Israelis.
Oh, don't talk about Israelis. Iran, right, the Persians, right, they've been fighting for 3,000 years. And they'll do them in, like...
Do them in is definitely what they're doing right now. But I should tell you that the Persians have not invaded anybody for many centuries, although plenty of people invaded them. And in the last time, when they were invaded by Iraq, the invader was backed financially and militarily and politically by Britain, the United States, and our pets in the Persian Gulf. Sorry, Gary, it wasn't a great line, but thanks for making the call. Now, let me take this moment to thank this week's top donors who've supported Moats through the website. Richard Sellers, Heather Smith, Don Stewart, Aubrey Aldridge, and Robert Spenceley. A big thanks for your generosity, and a reminder that even if you've only got a spare pound, dollar or euro, you really must leave it, or you're taking a liberty. Go to moats.tv and leave at least £1, €1, or $1. Now, let's go to Oregon. Not so many US callers tonight. Mark is in Oregon, and he has a point of view about the US soldiers being sent perchance to die for Donald J. Trump and the Epstein files. Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, George, I wanted to run this by you. The great example of Joe Kent resigning from the Trump. In 1789, the French refused to shoot the demonstrators in Paris. And the same thing happened in Leipzig in 1989 when the East German military refused to fire on the 70,000 demonstrators. And a week or two later, the Stasi flew out of the country. I wonder if we're getting close to something like that happening in the U.S. military. A colonel for the 82nd Airborne could refuse to order his guys to go and be perfectly legal. I mean, the invasion of Iran is a war crime. So anyway, I just thought, God, could that be a hopeful sign that the Joe Kent example could be repeated by a military or an admiral of a aircraft carrier? So anyway,
it's an important question that you raise, Mark, and of course there is a perfectly legal way that the U.S. military could get out of this war, and that is by exercising their perfectly legal right to claim conscientious objection. And if enough of them did it, it might sink Trump's war machine. That's a very important thought. Whether Joe Kent's example will be followed by others, particularly I'm thinking of his superior, Tulsi Gabbard, who said all the things that Joe Kent said until she was taken into Trump's administration. She's now the director of national intelligence. She knows that Trump is acting illegally. She knows that the non-existent threat to the United States cannot possibly justify the launching of such an horrific, bloody, and unendingly expensive manner. She knows that this will destabilize the world. She knows that the whole world's economy is at risk. You wait till the markets open tomorrow. You wait till the stock markets open tomorrow. You wait till the oil price notches up again and again and again tomorrow. Tulsi Gabbard knows all of that. But so far, she's not had the courage of her convictions. And Mr. Joe Kent definitely and has been predictably smeared as a result. Now, look, at 9 o'clock on Tuesday, 24th, it's our Call the Doctor show online. Chris Williamson, my erstwhile parliamentary colleague and deputy leader of my party, the Workers' Party of Britain, and the sensational Dr. Rahmi Aladwan. They have episode 19 discussing issues including a COVID jab whistleblower, the meningitis outbreak. Can you believe it? At the university in Canterbury, in Kent, there's an outbreak of meningitis, and 2 have died already, young people. And of course, the shameful, almost unbelievable decision by the British Parliament to decriminalise abortion up to birth. It is no longer a crime in Britain to abort your unborn child right up to the day that she was due to be born. If you allowed the baby to be born and then murdered her, that would be murder. But just as she's ready to appear in the world, you can murder her without criminal charges. All that will be on the agenda. So that's 9 o'clock on Tuesday. It's Call the Doctor, and you'll get it on my platforms. Well, and now here's the news, without whom the news wouldn't be the news. Here's Gayatri. Our kids make fun of that introduction, so that was especially for them. Gayatri, what's rattling?
All right, 2 things tonight, starting with a fun fact. Did you know that on this day, 22nd of March, 1945, the Arab League was officially formed, starting with 7 member countries, now standing at 22, spanning a landmass of 13 million square meters, with a $9 trillion GDP in total, and 500 million people, 1 language, and 1 monotheistic God. I mean, imagine how powerful it would be if they were actually united. I mean, compare and contrast the Arab world in 1973 with today, which is when the Arab-Israeli war took place, and the United States, under President Nixon, he resupplied Israel during this war and appropriated $2.2 billion in emergency aid towards Israel. And the response from the Arab countries was unanimous. It was collective. A total embargo on on oil exports to the U.S. This was started off with Libya, followed by Saudi Arabia, and the rest. And so 5 months oil, this embargo took 5 months, from March 1973 all the way to, from October 1973 to March 1974, which is eventually when the oil embargo was ended. Now, when it started, the oil price per barrel was around $2.75, and it increased by 300% to 400% to $11 to $12 by the end of it. Now, at the time, Iran was ruled by the Shah, so there's no mention of them in this case, and not a member of it anyway. But the king of Saudi Arabia, King Faisal at this time, said something incredible. You can't imagine it being said nowadays by any of these Arab leaders. He said, "You are the ones who can't live without oil. Our ancestors lived on dates, and we can easily go back and live that way."
Yeah, but you can't live without oil, just for completion. Now, there was a real king, a real Arab, a real Muslim, King Faisal, who quadrupled the price of oil to the Westerners who needed it in defense of the Palestinian people, in opposition to the settler apartheid state of Israel and its land grabs. How different. You know, I've never admitted this to you, but I was actually well old enough to remember that historical fact that you have just cited, and I was in fact quite prominent politically at that very moment. And I wrote about it in my audiobook, Street Fighting Man, in some detail. So I'm bitterly aware of how the Arab world in 1973 has declined as I look at the pitiful performance of the Arab leaders who can only convene to denounce Iran for retaliating to a massive American and Israeli attack upon themselves, but couldn't lift a finger even to deliver bread to the starving Palestinians in Gaza. As to the Arab League, who knew the Arabs had a league? It's a Vauxhall Conference League, as only English football supporters will understand. Anything else, Gayatri, before we go?
Just quickly, another anniversary, because on this day, 2 years ago, was the terrorist attack on the Crocus City Hall in the Russian capital of Moscow, killing 151 and injuring 200. It was one of the greatest terrorist attacks for many decades. And earlier this week, the Russian military court sentenced 4 gunmen and 11 of their accomplices to life sentences, and another some for 19 to 22 years. That was today, 2 years ago.
How many died in that terrorist attack?
151.
Unbelievable. Almost all children. Children at
a rock concert.
And, you know, terrorism is terrorism. No matter who carries it out. The slaughtering of innocent people for what you perceive to be the failures or crimes of guilty people is a sin in any religion. It's a crime in any language, and it's incumbent on every one of us to hate terrorism and not to encourage terrorism against people you don't like, whilst hoping that the terrorist will leave you alone. Now, I mentioned Syria earlier. There's a fight back now in Syria. The ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Idlib transplantation to Damascus is not going to hold. The Syrian Arab army was 250,000 strong. They were not defeated by ISIS and Al-Qaeda. They were betrayed. And their remaining patriotic elements are now armed and on the march. The people of Syria, including people who at first welcomed the downfall of Bashar al-Assad's government, are now seeing the reality of being ruled by Al-Qaeda, by ISIS. You know, they just passed an edict that male hairdressers in Syria were no longer allowed to cut the hair of women customers. That's what they're fixating on. Whilst Palestine burns, whilst Gaza is drowned in blood, whilst the whole region is in flames, they are passing edicts dealing with male hairdressers and female customers. But the main problem is all hairdressers in Syria are men, which means no Syrian woman can now go to the hairdresser. They've banned alcohol. Now, you know me, I hate alcohol, never drunk it. But there are minorities in Syria that are fond of alcohol and are perfectly religiously entitled to drink it. So, one by one, these frankly pathetic edicts by the former deputy leader of ISIS, I remind you, and the former deputy leader of Al-Qaeda, because he was both of those things, have sufficiently alienated both minorities and the majority Sunni Muslim community in Syria, and now the former army is taking the fight to ISIS and Al-Qaeda. So the maps are being redrawn, the lines are being redrawn, the tectonic plates are shifting all over the Arab world, including in Syria. Well, Gayatri, we are way over time, so thanks very much for that roundup, and I'll take you for chips in the morning, which is actually now. It's been the mother of all talk shows. It's been my pleasure back again to present the show, and God willing, I'll see you again, I hope, on Wednesday. We're experiencing record audience numbers, but you can still build it, still bigger. Bring another viewer with you for Wednesday. I challenge you. Good night.
It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows.
Go get 'em, George.